Woo, boy. Yes. It is 6:38 in the PM here on Friday, May the 2nd, 2025. The future is here. The future is now. All right, folks, it is time. It is time to get into our reoccurring segment called the Africa Report. So give it to me now. Yes, the motherland. What's going on in the motherland? There has become a leader who has emerged from West Africa, who is completely flipping the concept of African power on its head. As you heard in the intro, his name is Ibrahim Traore from Burkina Faso, the land of the late great Thomas Sankara. Since assuming power in 2022 in a coup, he has implemented a lot of bold and transformative policies that have been aimed at addressing the country's different challenges economically, socially, security-wise. He has done so many things in such a short period of time that it is scaring. It is scaring the hell out of Washington, D.C. He has launched the Postal Bank of Burkina Faso, the inaugural Postal Bank of Burkina Faso, with the capital of 15 billion French francs, that is aimed at enhancing the financial sovereignty of Burkina Faso. Now, he has emphasized the bank's role in reducing the reliance of the CFA franc, currency tied to France's colonial legacy. You see, France is still extorting much of West Africa, or at least it has been extorting much of West Africa. I know they told y'all that all these countries have been free since the 60s. That is not true. That is not true at all. France has still been controlling and exploiting them economically, whereas Mr. Traore, Captain Traore, should I say, has taken steps to liberate his people from the economic exploitation of the French. Now, there have been some claims that since this has happened, that Burkina Faso's GDP has grown from 18.8 billion to 22.1 billion just in the last 2.5 years under Captain Traore. He's opened the first gold refinery. Think about this. This is their first gold refinery in West Africa, a land that had so much gold that Mansa Musa, in traveling to Mecca, actually bankrupted much of Africa and the Middle East on its way because he was handing out so much gold to people. He was crashing economies. That's how much gold he had. And this is Burkina Faso's first gold refinery. They launched it last year. They have processed 142 tons of raw gold and produced 93 kilograms of refined gold, marking a shift towards local refinery. They do not want outside refining anymore. Now, the ultimate goal of this refinery is to produce 400 kilograms daily, on a daily basis, which will create 100 direct jobs and 5,000 indirect jobs, because he believes that they should control their own gold industry and not the French, not the Americans, not some outside Western influence. He's also nationalized the gold mine, the Bangu and Wangyang gold mines, for 80 million, which is a significant discount from the 300 million price, a dollar price agreed to by Endeavor Mining, a Western company, of course. This move aligns with his push to retain economic benefits from Burkina's gold industry, which accounts for over 80% of their exports. So again, you have to understand that these countries have technically been free for 60 years, but overwhelmingly they were still being exploited by Western interest. That's why all of this is so revolutionary and so radical. He's also opened the country's first locally funded tomato processing factory in Bobo Dioulasso, which is valued at $12 million. And this facility processes 100 tons of tomatoes daily, which generates, again, almost 200 direct jobs and over 10,000 indirect jobs, and reduces reliance on imported goods, because that's a big part of the way that they keep us, keep black countries on the leash as well. They say, well, you guys can't grow your own food, you can't make your own food, so you're dependent on us. And so Captain Traore is saying, no, we're going to build our own food processing plants. We'll see about that. They've become the first French colonized nation in sub-Saharan Africa to produce tomato concentrate. So after all these years, these countries haven't even been able to produce something that you would think is as simple as tomato concentrate. But again, that is because of so much Western exploitation. You have to think back to the late, great Thomas Sankara, who tried to do a lot of these reforms in the 80s, and he was, as you can guess, taken out by Western interest, assassinated by Blaise Compaoré, who was propped up by, of course, the United States and other Western interests. He's also launched a support center for cotton harvesters. President Traore has inaugurated Burkina Faso's first national support center for artisanal cotton processing. This initiative is taking advantage of the country's position as Africa's largest cotton producer and the world's 10th largest cotton producing nation. This center is aiming to enhance the local textile production and decrease dependency on imports. Again, this is how they get you with the imports. This is another way they get you. They get you hooked on, you need us for this, 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 and this. President Traore is saying, no, we don't need you for this. He's also establishing a factory to produce the uniforms of the military and the police. They've opened a factory to produce police and military uniforms locally, again, ending the imports and creating jobs. He's also, this is one of the reforms that he is implemented that I think a lot of people may not see as overtly important, but I do think it has value in the sense that it sends a message. He has ordered the judicial system in Burkina Faso to stop wearing those old antiquated European wigs and all that stuff. They are not going to dress like Europeans anymore. They will wear traditional African clothing in court. Lawyers in Burkina Faso will now wear 100% African clothes, traditional African clothes in court, replacing all those wigs. Now, why is he doing this? Because he understands that the justice system in a lot of these countries, the courts in these countries, have basically been modeled on a European standard of justice, which is always equaled injustice for black people. So it is about rejecting the legacy of colonialism, and it promotes cultural pride within their own community and their own countries. He's also done the same thing in the schools. He is encouraging the adoption of African textiles for school uniforms throughout Burkina Faso. This initiative is being spearheaded by the Ministry of Education of Burkina Faso, and it seeks to foster appreciation for the country's rich cultural heritage. He's also banned the importation of secondhand clothes. So when you see a lot of those, you see a lot of footage of African countries and they're wearing like something, like some Chicago Bulls clothes from like 1997 or something, like jerseys. You see them wearing a Lakers hat that was made in the mid 80s, and you go, dang, how did that kid get that? That's because, again, we import a lot of secondhand clothing and discarded clothing to these African countries. That's another way we keep our hand in their business, under the guise of helping. Well, he's banned that. They will no longer import secondhand clothes. He is encouraging entirely locally made attire. He has announced this ban, promoting the adoption of locally made garments among the African population. This initiative aims to bolster Burkina Faso's textile industry while fostering a sense of cultural and economic sovereignty that aligns with a broader vision. He has sought to revolutionize the healthcare system. They have supplied the Ministry of Health with 15 mobile clinics, almost 40 vehicles, 3 oxygen units, 11 cold rooms, 835 tablets, and 2,000 solar refrigerators. Additionally, 4,000 free cataract surgeries were provided, improving healthcare access for citizens. These initiatives are about addressing the dire humanitarian situation, with almost 5 million people needing emergency assistance and a $800 million funding gap for aid. He's also expanded the airport. They've invested 80 billion Central African francs to modernize the local airport, which is the Bobo Dioulasso Airport, which is the country's second largest hub. He has also acquired an Embraer 170 to revive Air Burkina, boosting national connectivity and infrastructure. Again, these are things you do when you are trying to build a country. And these are things that you are prevented from doing when you have the French and the United States and the British and other Western imperialist nations constantly in your business, in your pockets, picking your pockets, throwing you $2 and saying, well, if you want these $2, you're going to have to give us $10 worth of resources. He's supporting farmers with agricultural tools and equipment. He's given farmers 400 tractors, 953 motorcycles, 710 motor pumps, 10,000 tons of fish food, 68,000 tons of fertilizer, and 10,000 liters of phytosanitary products to enhance their agricultural productivity. And almost, maybe most importantly, he has joined together with Mali and Niger to establish the Alliance of Sahel States. Now, this is important because for many years, these countries in West Africa were sort of kept apart by ECOWAS, which was supposed to be the coalition of West African states, but was really just a puppet organization for the West, particularly the United States and France. So President Traore has signed a formally signed treaty with Mali and Niger to establish the Alliance of Sahel States, a collaborative confederation which is aimed at promoting regional cooperation and autonomy and about watching each other's backs. Anybody who tells you Pan-Africanism is dead, they ain't paying attention. They're not paying attention, because in West Africa, they are getting it together. And this is a big part of why I tell legacy Black Americans in this country, we do have to do what we have to do to make things better in this country. Obviously, in our communities, we live in an 80% Black city here in Gary. Obviously, you have cities like Detroit and Flint and all these other communities that are majority African American. We do have to do what we have to do to make our communities work here as we should. But we shouldn't be burning bridges with our African brothers and sisters either. This is one of the things I disagree a lot with Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore and Tariq Nasheed and the people from ADOS and the people from FBA. I understand that, you know, we should be fighting for reparations and making things better here, but we shouldn't be burning bridges with these newly liberated African countries either. We shouldn't be burning bridges, because we have no idea what Africa is going to look like 20 years from now at this point, thanks to people like President Traore. So the Alliance of Sahel States are already creating a stabilization fund, a central bank, and an economic committee to enhance economic development and stability within the region, while providing an alternative framework to ECOWAS, which was the puppet organization that they used to be a part of. He's also introduced a new biometric passport that does not feature the ECOWAS logo, which is signaling its transition as a part of the Alliance of the Sahel States. This is important as well. And and even more of a blow to the United States and other Western imperialists. They are restoring their alliance with Russia by reopening the Russian embassy in Burkina Faso after 31 years of being closed. He himself played a role in reopening the Russian embassy. This significant step was taken in the aftermath of the 2023 Russia-African Summit and is indicative of Burkina Faso's strategic shift towards fostering stronger relations with Russia and enhancing its diplomatic engagement beyond traditional Western alliances. You know, so he's forging closer ties with Russia and Turkey because they are replacing the French and they are replacing the United States. And so they're dealing with them as opposed to people who respect them and who are treating them with a certain level of respect as a sovereign nation and as a sovereign people, as opposed to the paternalistic, and let's just call it what it is, racist treatment and exploitation that they've gotten from the French and gotten from the United States. You know, this is why I've told you throughout the time that the Ukraine-Russia conflict has been going on that much of the global South is siding with Russia. They always have. It is our Western media that says, oh, the world is with Ukraine. Yeah, keep telling yourselves that. That's not the truth. Much of the global South supports China, supports Russia, because they have been treated with much more respect by China, by Russia, than they have been by Western imperialists like the United States and the French and the British and the Dutch and other exploitative empires that have treated Africa as their toilet and treated Africa as just something that they can steal and loot and pollute whenever they want. He's also changed the local language from French, which they were forced to speak under colonialism, and they have adopted local languages, which again is about the rejection of the colonial influence, including the expulsion of the French troops that were there. He expelled the French troops from Burkina Faso in 2023, officially ending Operation Sabre with a historic ceremony. This move reflects Traore's push for partnerships with, like I said, like Russia and other countries that will respect their sovereignty. He's also strengthened their military capacity, doubled military spending, and established a rapid support force to bolster the stretched forces in the north. The government has also launched a recruitment drive for 50,000 volunteers to join the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland and a militia aiding the military. Now, obviously, after doing all this stuff that I just told you, I just spent probably the last 20 minutes telling you all these reforms that Captain President Ibrahim Traore has enacted in Burkina Faso. So you know what this means. That we are trying to kill him. That's what that means. So he has survived 7 assassination attempts already. He's only been president since 2022. And he's already survived 7 coup attempts. In September 2023, an attempted coup was foiled, leading to the arrest of elite officers, including special forces members. In April 2025, just a few weeks ago, the government claimed to have thwarted a major plot led by ex-army officers based in the Ivory Coast, aimed at attacking the presidential palace. Now, some other entities have said that he has survived 16 assassination attempts. I don't know if that's true or not. I only have counted 7. But that's still a lot, considering that he's only been in office for less than 3 full years. And so the reason I want to do this story was because just this week in Congress, our government has gotten another Uncle Tom, another sellout to do their dirty work. A man named Michael Langley, General Michael Langley, who is the head of AFRICOM, just like Barack Obama had Kip Ward, who was the black man they got to help recolonize Africa during his administration. I think he served under George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Now they've got Michael Langley here. And all he did was demonize Captain Traore for doing what is best for his own people. This is what he had to say.
Yes. Africa is a mineral-rich, resource-rich continent. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, and you can leave the microphone on. Which are there success stories for the citizens of African countries when these larger, more prosperous nations or companies from more prosperous areas come in and exploit these minerals? What I'm asking is, does it ever redound to the benefit of the citizens there in Africa?
Chairman, there's very few cases. When the Chinese Communist Party is outed on them pulling out raw materials, not benefiting the populations of the host country, they've been trying to come up with ways how they can stay there and process only at the protests of the people of these African countries that host these mineral resources.
Okay. So is there any exception? Can you point to any success story where the people of one country or one or two countries have actually benefited substantially?
Not on China's behalf. Not on China's behalf. Just what happened in Zambia when they had the spillage into the river that services 5 million people. There's just these mining concessions. It just doesn't turn out real well for the African countries.
And do the countries that are receiving entreaties from the Belt and Road Initiative, are they more and more mindful of that now and therefore reluctant?
Yes, and that's where we need to be able to do information operations to illuminate some of the irregularities and some of the malign type activities of the Chinese in African countries.
Information and narratives are power then, aren't they?
Absolutely. And as I said a few minutes ago, and I always will tout this, that we own the facts. We own the facts. We know exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is doing, and to some degree what the Russian Federation is doing in their propaganda operations. But we don't own the narrative. Both of them own the narrative.
We sure don't. One more thing for you, General Langley. The approach that we have had with USAID and the other things like the President's Initiative on AIDS, how does our U.S. approach compare and contrast to the approach of Russia in Africa and also Communist China in Africa?
Oh, Chairman, we've always had the lead. So what you're seeing in those two competitors or challengers, they're following in our wake. They see what works as far as our influence and deepening partnerships through those soft powers, whether it be health diplomacy or whether it be in development type programs. So they're following in our wake, trying to replicate what we do best. And I think the African countries know this, and so this is where, as we start to look at going forward, as State Department starts to reset these programs, looking at what worked and what didn't work, and doubling down on what does work. I think we have enough capital built up in these countries for them to ensure their stabilization and also prosperity. The other two competitors are just trying to replicate what we do best.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that in order to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traore and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across. Even in Sudan, what's going on with the rapid support forces and Burhan of the Sudan forces, when you get down to it, is all about the revenue.
So what you were just listening to, I know I played I think it's about 5 minutes, okay? I wanted you to listen to all of it. What you were hearing is how the U.S. government manufactures consent to overthrow countries, to assassinate leaders, to do whatever it takes to destabilize whole regions of the world, to continue to be able to exploit countries. Now, you heard him, General Michael Langley and the senator he was talking to. They were basically trying to associate Captain Traore with all this corruption, with all that's going on, and also bring them into the war with the sort of Cold War that we're in with China, with Russia, etc. This is how this is the initial steps of how they manufacture consent from our government and from our populace to overthrow a country and throw it into chaos. Now, I just read off all the accomplishments of Captain Traore, President Traore, whatever, in the first 2.5 years of his time in office. And instead of talking about that in a congratulatory tone, it's, well, you know, they're making friends with Russia, they're making friends with China, he's corrupt, all this, he's stealing gold. As if the United States has not constantly propped up kleptocrats for generations. In Africa, in the Middle East, in Latin America, we helped put Augusto Pinochet in office. We helped kill Salvador Allende. In Iran, we put the Shah in power, helped get rid of Mossadegh, who was going to nationalize all of their oil and resources. This is what the United States government does. This is what they do. And it's important to shine a light on this because, again, I'm happy and I'm proud to see people from the motherland finally getting some independence after all these years of being treated as the redheaded stepchild. But it is important to understand that, you know, the wolves are coming. The wolves are coming for Captain Traore. Let me get this caller. Hello, caller. What's up?
Well, that's Scott.
What's up?
Listen, man, I heard you talking about the cap. You know, over there, Captain. You know, I can't pronounce his name. I don't want to.
Traore.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I get you to say it. I just call him Cap. Okay. But listen, this is what I want to say about the Cap. Okay. You know, man, think back about Africa, man, how Africa, you know, with just trinkets, how they, you know, sold us. You know, they sold you for carpet bracelets and a few flashy things, man. Things haven't really moved on from there, man. Now, give me a minute, man. You know, African continent, man, as you know, I know you know it because, you know, you got a pretty good education, man, you know. And, you know, Africa continent is 3 times bigger than the United States. Am I right?
Yeah, it's huge.
Okay, now think of this. If it wasn't for the hope ships, you know, by the medical people having babies and chronic diseases, they're over there too. You know, they got Ebola and they got a lot more other things, you know. And think, man, their health care would be bankrupt if it wasn't for them hope ships going over there taking care of cleft tongues and things like that and other health problems. You see what I'm saying? Mm. Every time a guy rises up, he got his hand in a honey pot. Now, old Cap, you know, he said he gonna do this, and you know, all the rebels, they done ganged up around the captain. You see, because you know he done said that he wanted to be independent. But tell me this. Now, I got friends that are Africans, right? Mm-hmm. And so they sell a lot of clothes. You know, they sell a lot of clothes from here and there. They send them back to Africa. They make a living by the tons. You know, they send them back over, you know, by the tons of clothes. You know, them clothes not coming. Now, they come from the United States, but the United States ain't sending them no hats and stuff. Africans buy that stuff, and they send it back themselves. They make a living over here off of that type of stuff. America don't send them no clothes. Now, they send them plenty of money, you know, to try to put them on their feet. But, you know, like sometimes money gets lost in misappropriation. But this is what I want to say about this, man. Have you ever got a tooth pulled?
Yes, I just did last year.
Okay, now think of this. You know, when we stand up for ourselves, and this goes to, you know, kind of correlate with your next subject matter with, you know, Dion and standing up. You know, Africans, man, we are very proud people. I'm a descendant of, you know, of that lineage myself, and you are too, and and people of Guinea too. Now the Dutch and the Brazilians and everybody along with America, they bought, you know, they was into slavery along with the English. You know, their wealth got built off of that. They used to send 5,000 Africans out of there. The English used to send 5,000 Africans out of there a month. They packed them in like sardines. They even had diagrams how to put them in ships. But think of this. We were so rebellious. We stood up for ourselves. We wouldn't eat. So what they would do, when I asked you if you ever had a Newport, they had this instrument. They would pull out their teeth and force feed them so they could stay healthy. They would rather die. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When they were kidnapped, they would rather die. I mean, they sodomized and did all kind of things to us, but we're still a strong and resilient people. And Mr. Sanders only showed one thing, that you don't get out on your knees to them. I mean, you're a smart young man. You should know that, you know, going back to the motherland, I don't think this world would be around 20 years from now on the course that we're on right now. I'm not going back over there. Once they send my people out, I'm going to stay here. Everybody coming here, ain't nobody going back.
I heard that. Well, thank you for your call, brother. I got to go to a commercial break.
All right, I'm out of here.
Stay listening. All right, folks. We know how the U.S. government does, but one of my favorite commentators is Jeffrey Sachs, who was an economist who worked with all these different governments over the years, and he pulls the curtain back on exactly how business is done internationally by America's international hitman. So before we go to a break, I wanted you guys to listen to this.
Excuse me. If anyone knows the day-to-day and year-to-year history, this is childish stuff. Childish stuff seems to work better than adult stuff. So no designs at all. The United States decided this man must be overthrown. It's called a regime change operation. There have been about 100 of them by the United States, many in your countries, and many all over the world. That's what the CIA does for a living. Okay? Please know it. It's a very unusual kind of foreign policy. But in America, if you don't like the other side, you don't negotiate with them, you try to overthrow them. Preferably covertly. If it doesn't work covertly, you do it overtly. You always say it's not our fault. They're the aggressor. They're the other side. They're Hitler. That comes up every 2 or 3 years. Whether it's Saddam Hussein, whether it's Assad, whether it's Putin, everyone else understands it quite clearly. Then came Minsk, and especially Minsk II, which, by the way, was modeled on South Tyrolean autonomy. And the Belgians could have related to Minsk II very well. It said there should be autonomy for the Russian-speaking regions in the east of Ukraine. It was supported unanimously by the UN Security Council. The United States and Ukraine decided it was not to be enforced. I was standing out in the freezing cold. I happened to be trying to have a ski day. And there I was, Jake, don't have the war. Oh, there'll be no war, Jeff. We know a lot of what happened the next month, which is that they refused to negotiate. The stupidest idea of NATO is the so-called open door policy. Are you kidding? NATO reserves the right to go where it wants without any neighbor having any say whatsoever? Well, I tell the Mexicans and the Canadians, don't try it. You know, Trump may want to take over Canada. So Canada could say to China, why don't you build a military base in Ontario?